Now, you have fully been convinced to venture into farming. You've even negotiated with the suppliers of the various factors of production. But have you ever stopped to think of, the practices that will address the environmental, economical, and social sustainability of the on-farm processes that you're handling within the farm? My name is Samuel. This is Africa Farming, a channel focused on new generation farmers and new entrants in farming who are willing to learn new farming practices. So take a second or two to subscribe and hit on the notification bell so that YouTube can always notify you whenever we have a new video released. Of course, right now we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and you joining the Africa Farming family will go a long way in enabling us reach that milestone. You can also partner with us by linking with us on our socials at Africa Farming KE on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, or at Africa Farming here on YouTube and also on Facebook. You can always leave your comments on the comment section down below so that we can actually be able to go through and see what you think about our videos. And if you've not watched some of our videos, kindly go back to our channel, browse through some of the videos that we've shot before, see which is relevant to you and whatever practice that you're doing currently, and just take a second or two, or just take your time and watch and let us know what you think about them. And I hope in the process we'll be able to learn together, because that is the essence by which we shoot our videos. So what are some of these good agricultural practices that we're talking about? So first and foremost, you have what we call crop rotation systems. That is a very good agricultural practice to implement within your farm. And for those people who don't know what crop rotation is where you change the type of crops that you plant within the same land based on the different seasons that come. So if this season you plant, for example, beans, next season you'll plant something else that is completely different from the beans. Now, people might ask, what is the reason, or why is it a good agricultural practice? Now, one thing I'll tell you is that pests always find feed in the kind of crops that you plant. So if you planted, for example, beans and there are pests that have come to attack them, the crop rotation will actually help break that, because you will not plant the same type of crop on the same land in the next season. So it helps you manage the pests that are actually in your farm by breaking their life cycle. So secondly, crop rotation basically helps you rejuvenate your soil so that you can continue planting year in, year out. For example, if this season you planted leguminous crops, for example, like beans, which add a lot of nitrogen into the soil, in the next season, since your soil will have a lot of nitrogen, it will always be recommended that you plant something that will need the nitrogen. So if you plant crops this season that fix nitrogen into the soil, in the next season it will always be recommended to plant plants or crops that will need that nitrogen in the soil. Yeah, so you understand how crop rotation works. Another good example could be when you plant crops this season that attract certain types of insects within your farm. In the next season, it's always good to plant crops that will suppress, or rather will not attract, those insects. Same thing to weeds. There are plants or crops that suppress weed growth. If you've done that this season, next season it's always good to plant the opposite of what you've experienced in this season, and that way you're able to rejuvenate the soil so that you can continue planting year in, year out. So I hope you understand why crop rotation systems are very, very important when it comes to farming. The second good agricultural practice to implement in your farm is when you prefer resistant varieties, whether it's crops or animals. Now, one thing about resistant species is that they always reduce your cost of production. When you don't plant resistant species, for example, resistant crop species in your farm, you end up spending a lot of money in, doing pest management and controlling a lot of things that form the ecosystem of where you're planting. But now when you plant crops that are resistant, that adapt very well to the condition of your farm, you reduce on your production costs. And this also happens when it comes to animals. The animals, like for example, when you're in a dry area, for example, the Dorper sheep, it adapts well to that kind of environment. But if you bring a merino sheep, you'll need you'll need to spend a lot of money to be able to manage that sheep or those sheep within your farm. So always prefer resistant species based on your environment. Now, the third good agricultural practice to implement within your farm is the seeding technique. Remember, when you're planting your seeds, the depth of the placement of the seeds, the seed treatment itself, the timing of planting, and also the method that you use to plant those seeds will matter a lot when it comes to farming. So, for example, there are seeds that will just need to be broadcasted on the farm to be able to do well. For example, if you're planting, let's say, grass for your animals and you have the seeds, you can always just throw them around your farm to be able to grow. But there are those seeds that will need barn seeders that always add fertilizer below and on the side of the seeds whenever you're planting for them to do better. So depending on what you're planting within your farm, always look at the seeding technique that you are implementing, and it should be what is right for what you want to plant. Now, talking about the timing of planting, there are those plants or crops that need to be planted at the beginning of a rainfall season, and there are those that do well when you're going towards the hot season. So always know what you're planting, what species of crops you're planting. Are they those that will need a cool season, so that you start early enough? Timing is of the essence. You have to start early enough planting them just before the rain starts. For example, maize. Maize will need a lot of rainfall, so it's always a good practice to plant them just before the rain start. And then there are those crops that you have to plant just before, for example, a mid-rainy season or a short rainy season, and and so on and so forth. So timing will matter a lot when it comes to farming different types of crops. The fourth good agricultural practice to implement within your farm is to ensure that you promote the growth of useful animals. Keeping or ensuring that you have a good predator population kind of enhances or creates a balance in your ecosystem. There are practices I always see in some farms where they've intentionally constructed patches to enable birds, wild birds, to be able to come and perch, and in the process they are able to pick those harmful insects within the farm that destroy your crops. For example, we have what we call armyworms and all that. And while you're doing all these, try to just study the habitat of these pests and be able to know how you can handle them in the next season so that it doesn't catch you off guard. Now, the fifth good agricultural practice to implement within your farm is to prioritize mechanical and biological measures instead of chemical measures. Get full information about botanical pesticides that you use in your farm. Ensure you develop a plan of action when it comes to your mechanical and biological measures, and try and use non-cash inputs to save your money. Not always will you find that whatever you're buying at the store or in an aggregate would be good for your farm. Sometimes even non-cash inputs might prove to actually be better. By this I mean your knowledge on plant protection should be able to guide you in coming up with the measures that you need to take in your farm. The sixth good agricultural practice to implement in your farm is to ensure that you do what we call monitoring the performance of your farming activities. Make sure you do record your pest management exercises and activities, and just ensure that you record the pest load in a specific season, so that this information can actually help you in the next season, because seasons keep changing, and whenever they do change and you have your records, you can actually compare what actually was experienced when this season was there and how did we manage, for example, the pest load, or how did we manage the pests around that specific season. The last good agricultural practice that we recommend you implement in your farm is what we call precision farming. Precision farming is basically where you use observing, measuring, recording to in your farming operations. An example of precision farming is where you use drones to do some things within your farm. It's almost similar to what we call digital farming, where you combine also technology in it. Part of precision farming is also bringing in information technology and using this to your advantage. Another example of precision farming is when you use global positioning systems in your farming operations. That is GPS. I'm sure you've used GPS in your day-to-day activities. So that too can also be integrated in farming. So if you find that there is a way you can integrate precision farming together with information technology in your farm, that would actually help you reduce your costs by up to 50%, because most of these things we do manually. Precision farming will actually be able to help you cut down on such costs. That's it for us today. I hope I'll see you in the next video. If you have any question, you can always go to our comment section and we'll try as much as possible to respond to each one of them. And until next time, changamka na ukulima. Bye bye. Thank you.